I woke up on my 32nd birthday to complete silence. No calls lighting up my phone screen, no text messages with balloon emojis, nothing. The morning sun streamed through my bedroom window as I reached for my phone, hoping maybe the notifications were just delayed. Instead, I found myself staring at my mother's Facebook post uploaded just 20 minutes ago, showing elaborate preparation photos for Marcus's birthday celebration next month. She was touring waterfront venues, sampling five-tier cake designs, and getting quotes from the city's most expensive catering company. The painful contrast hit me like a physical blow when I remembered her words from last year, delivered with that practiced, sympathetic smile. "Oh, sweetie, we just got so busy." My eyes drifted to my banking app notification showing the $85,000 bonus that had just cleared. Today, everything would change. The coffee tasted bitter as I scrolled through 15 years of social media history, each swipe revealing another grand celebration for my younger brother Marcus. My fingers moved mechanically across the screen, while memories flooded back with painful clarity. There was my 16th birthday, the day my parents claimed they had simply mixed up the dates on their calendar. That very same weekend, they unveiled Marcus's brand new BMW in our driveway, complete with a red bow and professional photographer to capture his joy. The neighborhood kids had gathered around while I watched from my bedroom window my own birthday cake from the grocery store sitting untouched on the kitchen counter. My 21st birthday arrived with promises of a special dinner, just the family. I wore my best dress and waited at the restaurant for 2 hours before accepting they weren't coming. The waiter's pitying looks still haunted me. Later that night, I discovered through Instagram that they had flown to Las Vegas for Marcus's bachelor party weekend, a 4-day extravaganza that apparently couldn't be rescheduled. My mother had texted me at midnight, clearly drunk, saying they'd make it up to me next year. The pattern continued relentlessly. My 25th birthday coincided with Marcus's job promotion party, though the job lasted exactly 3 weeks before he quit because the hours were too demanding. My graduation from MIT, where I'd earned my master's degree in computer engineering while working full-time, was missed because Marcus had a recreational softball tournament. They claimed the dates conflicted, though I'd sent them my graduation information 8 months in advance. Each forgotten birthday came with increasingly creative excuses: food poisoning that mysteriously struck the entire family except me, emergency home repairs that couldn't wait another day, a sudden flu outbreak that required them to quarantine, though Facebook photos showed them at Marcus's friend's wedding that same evening. The lies had become so routine that they barely bothered crafting believable stories anymore. My laptop sat open on the kitchen table, and I found myself diving deeper into digital archaeology. Email threads from 5 years ago surfaced, including one where I'd explicitly asked my mother to save my 30th birthday weekend. Her response assured me it was already in their calendar. Yet that weekend, they hosted a surprise party for Marcus's girlfriend's dog's birthday. Yes, a dog's birthday took precedence over their daughter's milestone celebration. Something made me search deeper into our family communications. I tried accessing the shared family calendar we supposedly all used. That's when I discovered it, a separate family group chat labeled Family Planning that included everyone except me. My heart raced as I realized I could see it, because Marcus had accidentally shared his login credentials with me years ago when I helped him set up his new phone. With trembling fingers, I opened the chat history. The messages stretched back 7 years. My stomach churned as I read through deliberate planning sessions where my family actively coordinated to be unavailable on my birthdays. Carmen's birthday is next Tuesday, my mother had written 3 years ago. I booked us that spa weekend we discussed. Tell her we forgot and had non-refundable tickets. My father's response included a thumbs-up emoji and a suggestion to post photos a few days later to make it seem spontaneous. The most recent thread made my blood run cold. Last month, my Aunt Helen had asked if they were finally going to acknowledge my birthday this year. My mother's response was swift and cutting. Carmen doesn't need celebrations. She's always been too independent anyway. Better to keep her grounded. Marcus needs the support more. I slammed the laptop shut, my whole body shaking with rage and hurt. 15 years of gaslighting unraveled before me. They hadn't forgotten. They had never forgotten. Every missed birthday was a calculated decision, a deliberate erasure of my existence in favor of my brother. The cruelty of it took my breath away. My hands gripped the edge of the table as I processed this revelation. They had stolen 15 years of celebrations, of feeling valued, of basic human acknowledgement. And they had done it on purpose. The corner office on the 42nd floor of the Tecton Industries building had been mine for 18 months now. As Senior Vice President of Technology Development, I commanded a salary of $275,000 annually, managed a team of 40 brilliant engineers, and had 3 patents pending under my name. Yet to my family, I simply did computer stuff that couldn't possibly compare to Marcus's entrepreneurial ventures. I pulled up my LinkedIn profile, staring at the accomplishments listed there. MIT graduate summa cum laude. Stanford MBA completed while working full-time. Featured speaker at international tech conferences. Board advisor for 2 successful startups. My latest product launch had generated $30 million in revenue in its first quarter alone. The industry magazines called me a rising star, a visionary in automated systems development. My family called me Carmen, who plays with computers. The memory of my college graduation still stung with fresh intensity. I had been chosen as valedictorian selected from a class of 3,000 students. The speech I'd prepared talked about overcoming obstacles, about proving doubters wrong, about succeeding, despite lack of support. My parents had promised to sit in the front row. Instead, they left after the processional march because Marcus had a recreational baseball game. Not a championship, not a crucial match, just a regular Sunday afternoon game with his drinking buddies. We thought the ceremony would be shorter. My mother had explained later, not even attempting to sound apologetic. You know how important Marcus's hobbies are for his stress levels. His stress from being unemployed for the 3rd time that year, though she didn't mention that part. I kept a folder in my desk drawer labeled Achievements They Missed. Inside were photos from every major milestone. There I was receiving the Women in Technology Award, standing alone at the podium. My first major product launch celebration, surrounded by colleagues but no family. The day I was promoted to VP, champagne toast with my team, while my family group chat discussed Marcus's latest girlfriend drama. The irony cut deep when I thought about our family dynamics. Every year, I quietly purchased and sent the anniversary gifts from the kids to our parents. The expensive wine club membership, the cruise vacation, the kitchen renovation contribution. Marcus's name always appeared on the card alongside mine, though he hadn't contributed a penny. When they gushed about their thoughtful son at family gatherings, I bit my tongue until it bled. My phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification. Another headhunter reaching out with opportunities, this one from a company offering $400,000 base salary plus equity. I archived it without responding. Despite everything I loved, my current role had built something meaningful at Tecton. Success for me wasn't about the money, though the money certainly didn't hurt. It was about creating solutions that mattered, leading teams that change industries, proving that the forgotten daughter could build empires. The most painful part was how they portrayed me to extended family. Last Thanksgiving, I'd overheard my mother on the phone with my cousin in Seattle. "Oh, Carmen, she does some kind of secretary work with computers. Marcus is the real success story. Did you hear about his latest business venture?" The venture in question was a food truck idea that never materialized past a rough sketch on a napkin. Meanwhile, I'd just closed a multi-million-dollar deal with Microsoft. I discovered the depth of their deception at my Uncle Robert's funeral last year. Family members I hadn't seen in years, approached me with condolences, but also confusion. "Your mother says you're having such a hard time finding stable work," my great aunt whispered, pressing $100 bill into my palm. "This might help with groceries." I'd driven to the funeral in my Tesla wearing a $3,000 suit, having flown in from a conference where I delivered the keynote address. The fabrication went deeper than professional dismissal. My parents had created an entire fictional version of me for public consumption. In their narrative, I was perpetually single because I couldn't keep a man interested, not because I'd chosen to focus on my career after escaping an abusive relationship they'd pressured me to maintain. I was still figuring things out at 32, not running divisions at Fortune 500 companies. Most incredibly, they told relatives that Marcus helped support me financially when I struggled. My assistant knocked on my office door, reminding me about the board meeting in an hour where I'd present the quarterly projections. I straightened my shoulders, pushing down the familiar ache. In 2 hours, I'd be leading a presentation that would determine $50 million in budget allocation. But to my family, I'd still just be Carmen, who worked with computers and needed to be kept humble. The bonus notification glowed on my phone screen. They had no idea how much their forgotten daughter had achieved. More importantly, they had no idea what was coming next. The email arrived at exactly 9:43 that morning, marked with the red exclamation point indicating executive priority. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it, though I'd been expecting the news for weeks. The quarterly board review had gone better than projected, and the automated supply chain system I'd developed had saved the company $12 million in its first implementation phase. The bonus amount still made my breath catch $85,000, deposited directly into my account with a personal note from the CEO thanking me for my exceptional contribution to Tecton's growth. I stared at the number on my screen then, at my banking app confirming the deposit. After taxes, I'd have nearly $60,000 to add to my already substantial savings. The weight of possibility pressed against my chest. For years, I'd saved aggressively, living well below my means, while my colleagues upgraded to luxury apartments and European vacations. My modest one-bedroom apartment in the city served its purpose. My 5-year-old Honda ran perfectly fine. Designer labels held no appeal when thrift store finds worked just as well. The contrast with Marcus's lifestyle couldn't have been starker. I pulled out a notebook I'd kept for years, a detailed accounting of our family's financial favoritism. The private elementary school tuition, when he struggled in public school, $48,000. The college education at a prestigious university, despite mediocre grades, $220,000. The seed money for his first business venture, a gaming lounge that closed within 6 months, $75,000. The sports car for his 25th birthday, $60,000. The wedding my parents funded entirely, $90,000. The down payment for his house when his credit score couldn't qualify him for a loan, $150,000. The list continued for 3 pages. Bail money when his temper got him arrested. Attorney fees when his business disputes turned legal. Medical bills from his ski trip accident, though he'd let his insurance lapse. Investment after investment in failed ventures, the restaurant that never opened the app, that never launched the consulting firm, that consulted no one. By my calculation, my parents had spent over $800,000. Enabling Marcus's failures. Meanwhile, I'd worked 3 jobs to pay for MIT, survived on ramen and hope during graduate school, slept in the 24-hour computer lab when I couldn't afford campus housing, wore the same interview suit to dozens of job interviews until I landed my first real position. Every achievement came through my own sweat and sacrifice, while Marcus failed upward on a cushion of parental money. My phone rang. My mother's contact photo appeared, a smiling family portrait from 5 years ago, where I stood slightly apart, shadows under my eyes from working overnight shifts. I let it go to voicemail, already knowing the script. These birthday calls had their own pattern. She'd remember around noon, offer hollow apologies, suggest a rain check dinner that would never materialize, then seamlessly transition into Marcus's latest financial need. The voicemail played exactly as predicted. Her voice carried that practiced mixture of distraction and false warmth. "Hi, sweetie, happy birthday. Sorry we couldn't call earlier. You know how mornings are. Listen, we need to discuss Marcus's situation. He's having some cash flow issues with his newest venture. We're all chipping in to help. Call me back." I deleted the message without returning the call. Cash flow issues, the euphemism for another failed business, another bailout, another chunk of my parents' retirement savings sacrificed to the altar of Marcus's potential. They'd refinanced their house twice for him, liquidated investments, delayed their own needs, and still they came calling for more, expecting their forgotten daughter to contribute to the cause. My laptop displayed spreadsheets from the previous month's strategic planning session. The product roadmap I developed would revolutionize how companies managed inventory. My team had worked 60-hour weeks to meet deadlines. I'd slept in my office more nights than I'd gone home, surviving on caffeine and determination. The $85,000 bonus reflected a fraction of the value I'd created, but it was mine. Earned through expertise they dismissed and dedication they never acknowledged. The realization crystallized as sharp and clear as winter air. I was done. Done subsidizing their favoritism. Done shrinking myself to fit their narrative. Done pretending their casual cruelty didn't leave scars. The bonus money wouldn't just sit in savings gathering interest. It would buy something far more valuable than any investment portfolio. It would buy freedom. I opened a new browser tab and typed "Coastal California real estate" into the search bar. The images that populated made my heart race. Ocean views, private beaches, spaces where no one would forget my birthday because they'd never known it in the first place. Where success could be worn openly without apology or explanation. Where I could build a life that belonged entirely to me. A text message interrupted my search. "Marcus, predictably. Mom says you're not answering. We need 5K by Friday for investor meeting. Family helps family right. No birthday acknowledgement. No pretense of caring. Just expectation and entitlement wrapped in blood relation." I typed and deleted a dozen responses before settling on silence. Let them wonder. Let them wait. I had houses to view and a future to claim. The girl they'd forgotten was about to become the woman they'd never forget. My fingers moved across the keyboard, scheduling appointments with realtors in Monterey, Carmel, Half Moon Bay. Coastal towns where the Pacific Ocean could wash away 32 years of calculated neglect. The bonus money glowed in my account like a promise. They wanted $5,000 for Marcus's investor meeting. I'd give them something far more valuable, a lesson in consequences. My birthday gift to myself wouldn't be another year of silent suffering. It would be the beginning of a life where being forgotten was no longer possible because I'd removed myself from their memory entirely. The cursor blinked on the screen as I confirmed my first viewing appointment. 3 bedrooms, ocean view, available immediately. The drive to Monterey took 3 hours, but I left at 5 in the morning, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of amber and rose as I headed south on Highway 1. The playlist I'd created specifically for this journey filled my Honda with songs about freedom and new beginnings. My phone sat silent in the center console, airplane mode activated to prevent any family intrusions into this sacred mission. For the first time in my adult life, I was making a major decision without considering their opinions, without factoring in their needs, without diminishing my wants to accommodate their expectations. Sarah Chen, the realtor I'd connected with, met me at a small cafe overlooking Cannery Row. She was nothing like the realtors my parents had used, those slick-talking men who spoke primarily to Marcus, even when I asked the questions. Sarah listened intently as I explained my requirements: ocean proximity, structural integrity space for a home office, And most importantly, a place that felt like sanctuary. She pulled out her tablet, showing me listings that matched not just my budget, but what she intuitively understood I needed emotionally. "I have 3 properties to show you today," Sarah explained, her voice carrying the kind of professional warmth that felt genuine. "But there's one in particular I think you'll love. It's been on the market for 4 months because it needs some cosmetic updating, but the bones are extraordinary." The first 2 houses were beautiful, but wrong. Too formal, too similar to the kinds of places my mother would approve of, all marble countertops and beige conformity. I walked through them politely, appreciating their virtues, while knowing they'd never be home. Sarah didn't push, didn't try to convince me that my feelings were wrong. She simply nodded and drove us to the 3rd location. The cottage sat perched on a gentle cliff, weathered cedar shingles, telling stories of decades facing the Pacific. Built in 1925, it had the kind of character that modern construction couldn't replicate. Original hardwood floors creaked under my feet as Sarah unlocked the front door, and immediate warmth enveloped me despite the morning chill. The living room featured a stone fireplace that had witnessed nearly a century of lives, and massive windows framed the ocean like living artwork. The kitchen was renovated 5 years ago," Sarah noted, but I barely heard her. I was already moving through the space like I'd lived there forever, my fingers trailing along built-in bookshelves, pausing at the window seat that overlooked the private beach access. 3 bedrooms provided more space than I'd ever need, but I could already envision one as my office, another as a guest room for the friends who'd become my chosen family. The master bedroom made me catch my breath. French doors opened onto a private balcony where morning coffee would taste like freedom. The ensuite bathroom featured a clawfoot tub positioned to watch storms roll in from the Pacific. I stood in the doorway, overwhelmed by the possibility of soaking in that tub without wondering if I was taking too long, without apologizing for existing in space. "The sellers are motivated," Sarah mentioned gently. "It's priced at $650,000, but there's room for negotiation. The inspection report is clean, just some minor updating needed. New rain gutters, some deck reinforcement, nothing structural." I walked out onto the deck, breathing salt air that tasted like redemption. Below, waves crashed against rocks with rhythmic certainty. A pod of dolphins played in the distance, their freedom mocking every cage I'd allowed others to build around me. This wasn't just a house. It was proof that I existed beyond their narrative evidence that forgotten daughters could build kingdoms from their erasure. My phone buzzed in my pocket despite airplane mode, a calendar reminder I'd set weeks ago. Marcus's birthday party planning meeting, 2 p.m. I deleted it without hesitation, then created a new reminder: make offer on freedom. Sarah stood quietly beside me, understanding the weight of the moment without needing explanation. Some decisions transcended real estate. "I want to offer $625. I said, my voice steady with certainty. "Cash deal, quick close. I can put down $100,000 immediately." Sarah's professional composure cracked slightly, revealing genuine delight. "That's a strong offer. The sellers will definitely consider it. You're pre-approved for the mortgage." I nodded, not mentioning that I'd been pre-approved for nearly double the amount. Financial prudence had been my shield against their chaos for years. While Marcus burned through money like kindling, I'd built wealth quietly, methodically. Every bonus saved, every raise invested, every temptation to overspend resisted. The discipline they mocked had created this moment. We toured the property twice more, Sarah pointing out details I'd missed in my initial emotional response. The workshop space and the garage where I could set up equipment for personal projects. The established garden with Meyer lemon trees and lavender bushes. The neighbor who'd lived there 40 years and could share the house's history. Each detail added layers to a vision of life I'd never dared imagine. There's one more thing," Sarah said as we prepared to leave. She handed me a folder containing neighborhood information. There's a sailing club at the marina, very welcoming to new members. The farmers market every Saturday is legendary, and the tech community here is small but growing. Several people from Silicon Valley have relocated here for the lifestyle. Everything aligned like coordinates on a map, pointing toward home. I signed the initial paperwork in Sarah's office, my signature, flowing with unusual confidence. The earnest money check felt lighter than air despite its substantial amount. We scheduled the inspection for Tuesday, meetings with contractors for Wednesday. I'd need to return to the city, maintain the facade of normalcy while orchestrating my liberation in secret. The drive back took longer, weekend traffic clogging the highway. I didn't mind. Each mile gave me time to process the magnitude of what I'd set in motion. My family was planning Marcus's party, discussing venues and guest lists and themes. They had no idea their forgotten daughter had just made an offer on a house worth more than all of Marcus's failures combined. The irony tasted sweeter than any birthday cake they'd never ordered for me. The email arrived at 6:27 on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing code deployments. Sarah's message was brief but life-changing. Offer accepted, congratulations. My hand stilled on the keyboard as the reality settled into my bones. $625,000. My offer? My house. My decision made without committee approval or family input. I closed my office door and allowed myself 30 seconds of silent celebration before switching into execution mode. The closing was scheduled for 3 weeks out, giving me time to arrange the necessary pieces while maintaining my ordinary routine. I met with my financial advisor, Margaret Winters, a brilliant woman who'd helped me grow my savings through careful investment strategies. She reviewed the purchase agreement with meticulous attention, nodding approvingly at the inspection contingencies I'd negotiated. When she asked about my family's involvement, I simply said they had other priorities. The understanding in her eyes suggested she knew more than I'd explicitly shared. The wire transfer for the down payment felt surreal. $100,000 moving from my account to escrow, years of sacrifice and secret saving converted into concrete ownership. I signed documents with a Mont Blanc pen I'd bought myself after my first promotion, the weight of it grounding me in the momentousness of each signature. The mortgage approval came through without issue, my credit score and income making me what the banker called an ideal candidate. If only my family could see their unreliable daughter now. While lawyers processed paperwork, I dove into renovation planning with infectious enthusiasm. The contractor Sarah recommended, James Morrison, walked through the property with me on a foggy Saturday morning. He was a craftsman who understood the difference between updating and destroying character. We discussed reinforcing the deck to ensure another century of stability, updating the guest bathroom with period-appropriate fixtures, installing a professional-grade internet system for my remote work needs. His estimate came in reasonable, and I approved it without the usual agonizing my family did over every expense. The furniture shopping became my secret joy. After years of making do with second-hand basics, I could finally choose pieces that reflected my taste rather than my budget. I selected a mahogany writing desk for the office, its surface vast enough for multiple monitors and engineering drawings. A reading chair in cognac leather that would cradle me through coding marathons. A dining table made from reclaimed redwood where I'd host dinners for people who actually remembered my existence. Each purchase was deliberate, considered mine. I established routines in Monterey without anyone noticing my absence. Saturday mornings, browsing the farmer's market, learning which vendor had the best sourdough, which stall sold honey from hives near my new neighborhood. Sunday afternoons at coffee shops, eavesdropping on local conversations, absorbing the rhythm of a community that would soon be home. I joined the sailing club Sarah had mentioned, signing up for lessons that would begin after my move. The instructor, Paula, welcomed me with enthusiasm that felt genuine rather than transactional. My parents' calls increased during this period, their timing suspiciously regular. Each conversation followed a script perfunctory check-in pivot to Marcus's latest crisis request for financial assistance. I developed a strategy of vague responses and sudden work emergencies. Big project deadline became my refrain. They never asked for details content with any excuse that didn't require them to engage with my actual life. The freedom in their disinterest was intoxicating. The storage unit I rented near my city apartment became command central for my transition. Boxes accumulated, gradually labeled in code only I understood. Winter clothes meant engineering awards and certificates. Old textbooks contained photo albums documenting achievements they'd missed. Kitchen supplies held the few sentimental items worth preserving from a childhood spent in shadows. The physical act of sorting possessions clarified what mattered and what had only been weight I'd carried out of obligation. 3 days before closing, my father called with unusual urgency. His voice carried the particular tone that preceded major requests. "Carmen, we need to discuss something important as a family. This Sunday, 2 o'clock. Don't make other plans." The command rankled, delivered without consideration for my schedule or desires. I agreed pleasantly, knowing I'd be 3 hours south, signing papers for my new existence, while they waited at a table set for 4 that would only ever seat 3. The morning of the closing arrived crisp and clear. I dressed carefully in the navy suit I'd worn to my biggest presentation, adding pearl earrings my grandmother had left me. Sarah met me at the title company office with a bouquet of white roses and a smile that could have powered the grid. The sellers, an elderly couple relocating to Arizona, shook my hand warmly. They shared stories about the house's quirks, which windows stuck in winter were the best spot for sunset watching was located. Their joy at passing their beloved home to someone who'd cherish it added unexpected emotion to the proceedings. Each signature brought me closer to autonomy. Initial here, sign there, date this form. The repetitive action became almost meditative. With every pen stroke, I wrote myself into a new narrative. The final signature coincided with my phone buzzing insistently. Marcus texting about the family meeting I was missing. I powered off the device without reading his message, focusing on the keys being placed in my palm. "Congratulations, Miss Martinez," the title officer announced. "You're now a homeowner." The weight of the keys felt proportional to their significance. I thanked everyone, accepted their good wishes, and walked to my car in a daze of accomplishment. The drive to my new home took 40 minutes each mile, increasing the distance between who I'd been and who I was becoming. I used the time to make mental lists, utility transfers, address changes, moving schedules. The logistics of liberation required careful orchestration. I unlocked my front door as the owner rather than visitor. The empty rooms echoed with possibility. Afternoon light streamed through those magnificent windows, turning dust motes into celebration confetti. I walked through each room, slowly photographing angles that captured the essence of what I'd accomplished. These images would matter later, but in the moment, they were simply evidence that dreams deferred weren't always dreams denied. The furniture delivery was scheduled for the following week. The utilities were already transferred to my name. Internet installation would happen Tuesday. Each practical detail had been handled with the same meticulous attention I brought to engineering problems. By the time I returned to my city apartment that evening, my entire transition plan was locked in place. 7 days until the move. 7 days of pretending nothing had changed. 7 days before detonating the careful fiction of their forgotten daughter. My laptop displayed 17 missed calls from family members. The family meeting had apparently devolved into chaos when I failed to appear. I crafted a careful response about server crashes and emergency debugging, buying myself a few more days of peace. They accepted the lie, easily conditioned to believe work was my only priority. If they'd paid attention, they'd have noticed my car wasn't in the office parking garage, my apartment lights stayed dark. My life had already shifted beyond their reach, but attention required seeing me as more than background noise in their Marcus-focused symphony. The alarm never rang, because I hadn't set one. My 32nd birthday began with natural awakening sunlight filtering through my apartment's blinds in patterns I'd memorized over 5 years of residence. The silence felt different this morning, pregnant with significance rather than empty with neglect. I lay still for several minutes, testing the weight of 32 years against my ribs. The number felt both heavy and hollow, a measurement of time that hadn't quite measured up to life. My phone remained face down on the nightstand, a black rectangle of potential disappointment I wasn't ready to confront. Instead, I moved through my morning routine with deliberate mindfulness. The coffee maker gurgled familiar comfort while I scrambled eggs with the last vegetables in my nearly empty refrigerator. I'd stopped grocery shopping properly 2 weeks ago, eating through pantry supplies rather than restocking a kitchen I was abandoning. The metaphor wasn't lost on me. By 8:45, I was dressed and driving to the office NPR, providing background noise to thoughts that refuse linear organization. The security guard, Antonio, smiled warmly as I badged in. "Happy birthday, Miss Carmen," he called out, remembering from the employee database alert system. The simple acknowledgement from a relative stranger hit harder than it should have. I thanked him with genuine warmth, tucking the small kindness away like emergency currency. My team had decorated my office overnight. Balloons in Tecton's corporate colors bobbed against the ceiling. A handmade banner stretched across my whiteboard signatures and doodles from 40 engineers who valued my existence enough to arrive early for setup. The gesture overwhelmed me, forcing me to close my door and breathe through the unexpected emotion. These people, who I'd known fewer years than my family had known me decades, managed what blood relations couldn't: basic recognition of my existence. Patricia Liu, my lead architect, knocked gently before entering with a bakery box. "Red velvet," she announced proudly, "from that place you mentioned loving last month." She'd remembered an offhand comment during a debugging session. The cake was perfect cream cheese frosting swirled into peaks that looked too pretty to disturb. We'd share it at the afternoon stand-up meeting, 40 voices singing off-key, while I made wishes I was already granting myself. The morning progressed with surprising normalcy. Code reviews, architecture discussions, a conference call with the Tokyo team about implementation timelines. Work provided blessed distraction from the phone that still lay silent, except for LinkedIn notifications and corporate emails. I lost myself in logic problems and system designs, finding comfort in puzzles that had solutions, unlike the enigma of family indifference. Lunch arrived via delivery from my favorite Thai restaurant, ordered by my assistant, with instructions to expense it to the department budget. My team had apparently coordinated a birthday lunch fund without my knowledge. The pad thai tasted like validation, each bite confirming that I existed in spaces beyond family oversight. I ate at my desk while reviewing the Monterey house photos Sarah had sent, imagining future birthdays with ocean views and self-selected company. The text from Marcus arrived at 2:17, right on schedule. "Mom wants to know if you're coming to dinner Sunday. Also, can you lend me $2K, promise to pay back next month?" No birthday mention. The casualness of his financial request tucked into a message about family dinner. I hadn't been properly invited to crystallize years of dynamic dysfunction. I archived the message without responding, returning to the pull request that actually deserved my attention. My mother's call came at 4:33, timed for when she finished her afternoon yoga class. I let it ring through to voicemail, watching her contact photo pulse on the screen. The recording lasted 47 seconds, her voice carrying that particular brittleness that preceded guilt trips. "Hi, sweetie, happy birthday. I know we mentioned dinner Sunday, but we're thinking of rescheduling. Marcus has a thing. Anyway, call me back about helping with his situation. You know, family comes first." Family comes first. The phrase echoed through my skull like sonar, pinging off hollow spaces. I thought about the sailing club membership card in my wallet, the keys to my Monterey house tucked in my purse, the life I was building where family meant chosen connection rather than obligatory disappointment. My finger hovered over the delete button before pressing down with satisfying finality. The afternoon stand-up meeting transformed into an impromptu celebration. My team gathered in the large conference room, devices abandoned in favor of cake and connection. They'd pooled resources for a gift card to the electronics store I frequented, knowing my weakness for new gadgets. The amount made me protest, but Patricia waved off my objections. "You've saved our asses more times than we can count. Let us do this." As they sang "Happy Birthday" in 3 languages, I felt the profound shift between those who saw me and those who looked through me. These colleagues knew my coffee order, my debugging soundtrack preferences, my tendency to solve problems during walking meetings. They celebrated my victories and supported my struggles. They showed up, which was more than Blood had managed in 15 years. The comparison between this genuine warmth and my family's calculated coldness sharpened with painful clarity. My parents could recite Marcus's favorite everything restaurant movie brand of cereal. They flew to his college graduation, his wedding, his housewarming party. They remembered his half-birthday for crying out loud. Yet their daughter's actual birthday warranted 47 seconds of voicemail wedged between yoga and whatever Marcus needed funding for this week. Evening descended as I packed the last boxes in my apartment. The movers would arrive Saturday morning, but I wanted personal items handled by my own hands. The photo of my grandmother went carefully between sweaters. She died when I was 12, but I remembered her seeing me in ways her son never learned. The engineering textbooks that got me through MIT found space in a special crate. The birthday cards from colleagues over the years, proof that I mattered somewhere to someone, nested safely in tissue paper. My laptop dinged with an email from Sarah. "Happy birthday, can't wait for you to start your new chapter in Monterey. The sunset tonight was spectacular from your deck." She'd attached a photo taken from my future home, the sky painted in impossible shades of pink and gold. This stranger becoming friend had remembered my birthday more thoughtfully than those who claimed to love me most. The irony of the day settled around my shoulders like a familiar shawl. My 32nd birthday had been forgotten by family, but celebrated by chosen tribe. The pattern, once painful, now felt like permission. If they couldn't remember my existence, I wouldn't need to consider theirs. The house keys in my purse weighed exactly as much as freedom should, substantial, but not burdensome. Tomorrow, I'd wake up to my last day pretending their neglect still mattered. Sunday, while they gathered for dinner, I wouldn't attend. I'd be hanging pictures in rooms where birthdays would never be forgotten, because the only person who needed to remember lived there. Saturday morning arrived with coastal fog that matched my mood perfectly. The movers had left my city apartment stripped bare, only cleaning supplies and overnight essentials remaining. I drove toward Monterey with my car packed full of plants and precious items too delicate for moving trucks. The 3-hour journey felt like traveling between dimensions, each mile marking the distance between my former life and future peace. By noon, I was standing in my new living room boxes, stacked like promises, waiting to be unwrapped. The physical labor of unpacking provided a welcome distraction from the mental load of transformation. I started with the kitchen, finding homes for dishes that had never quite belonged in my cramped apartment galley. The vintage mixer my grandmother left me looked perfect on the counter, finally having space to breathe. Each item placed with intention, creating a home that reflected my taste rather than compromise. The afternoon sun broke through clouds just as I finished arranging the living room, light flooding through those magnificent windows like divine approval. My neighbor, Eleanor Whitfield, appeared at 4 with a welcome basket and genuine warmth. She was 73, had lived next door for 30 years, and possessed the kind of sharp intelligence that made age irrelevant. We sat on my deck drinking tea while she shared neighborhood history and local recommendations. The previous owners were lovely, but always seemed temporary, she observed. You have the look of someone who intends to grow roots. Her perception startled me with its accuracy. As evening approached, I found myself drawn to the French doors in my bedroom. The sunset, developing over the Pacific, defied description, colors that would seem garish in paint appearing perfect in sky. I grabbed my phone, suddenly needing to document this moment of absolute rightness. The first photo captured the view from my deck: infinite ocean, dramatic cliffs, wildflowers blooming despite December chill. The second showed my coffee cup perched on the railing, steam curling into salt air. The third, my favorite, caught sunlight streaming through the kitchen window onto the farmhouse sink I'd already fallen in love with. I opened Instagram, fingers hovering over the keyboard as I crafted the caption. This needed to be perfect. Not vengeful, not bitter, but clear in its implications. After several drafts, the words finally came. Birthday gift to myself, my own slice of paradise. Sometimes the best family is the one you choose to create. Starting this new chapter with ocean views and endless possibilities. Grateful for everyone who actually shows up. My finger hesitated for exactly 3 seconds before pressing share. The post went live at 5:47 p.m., timed for maximum weekend engagement. Then I set my phone aside and returned to unpacking, refusing to watch for reactions. 20 minutes later, curiosity won. The notification count had exploded beyond normal metrics. Colleagues from Tecton had found the post, first their comments full of genuine congratulations and heart emojis. Patricia wrote, "You deserve every sunset." My college roommate added, "About time you invested in yourself." Professional contacts, casual acquaintances, even former classmates emerged with supportive messages. The warmth from virtual strangers exceeded anything family had offered in decades. Then Marcus's comment appeared, dripping with characteristic obtuseness. "Nice rental. Where's the party? Better have room for your favorite brother." The assumption that I could only rent never by spoke volumes about how they saw me. The entitlement to party space, the self-designation as favorite when he was my only brother, the complete missing of the point. It was Marcus distilled to essence. I didn't respond, but others did. Patricia, bless her, replied, "Not a rental. Carmen bought it. Cash offer, quick close. Our VP does everything at the highest level." My phone began ringing within minutes. Mother, first her ringtone shrill against the evening quiet. I declined the call, then did the same for Father Marcus and 2 aunts in quick succession. The voicemails piled up unheard. Text messages flooded in with increasing urgency. I put the phone on silent and made myself dinner in my new kitchen, grilling fish I'd bought from the harbor market that morning. The simple meal tasted like victory. By 8 p.m., I allowed myself to review the accumulated messages. They formed a predictable symphony of dysfunction. Mother's texts progressed from confusion to accusation. "What is this about? How could you make such a decision without consulting us? This is not how family behaves." Father's messages focused on logistics. "How did you afford this? Did you take out risky loans? You need to explain yourself immediately." Marcus had sent 17 texts in escalating panic. My favorite, "This is fake, right? You're pranking us, not funny, Carmen." The possibility that his overlooked sister could achieve something substantial without family involvement simply didn't compute in his worldview. His final message revealed the real concern. "Mom says you were supposed to help with my business loan. How can you buy a house when I need support?" The extended family chimed in with their own variations. Aunt Helen wrote paragraphs about family loyalty and staying close to home. Uncle Richard sent a single line, "Your parents are very hurt." Cousins I hadn't heard from in years suddenly remembered my existence, mostly to scold me for causing drama. The uniformity of their responses revealed coordinated damage control, probably orchestrated through the family chat I'd discovered myself excluded from. I composed a single response, copying everyone. I've purchased a home in Monterey where I'll be living permanently. After 15 years of forgotten birthdays and dismissed achievements, I'm building a life where I'm valued. I'm at peace with my decision, and hope you can be too. My door is open to those who want a genuine relationship based on mutual respect. The response was immediate and explosive. My phone lit up like emergency services dispatch. I watched the notifications cascade for a moment before powering down the device entirely. The silence that followed felt holy. Outside, waves crashed against cliffs with eternal rhythm. Stars emerged from coastal clouds in patterns I was still learning. My new home creaked and settled around me, sounds I'd grow to recognize as comfort rather than strangeness. Eleanor appeared at my door with a bottle of wine and impeccable timing. "Saw the lights on," she said simply. "Thought you might enjoy some company while you settle in." We sat on the deck, despite the chill wrapped in blankets I'd unpacked earlier. She didn't pry, didn't ask about the family drama she'd probably sensed. Instead, we talked about tides and migration patterns, books we'd loved, places we'd traveled. The conversation felt like coming home in ways my actual family never managed. By 10 p.m., exhaustion claimed victory over adrenaline. I made my bed with new sheets purchased specifically for this beginning, their thread count a luxury I'd denied myself for years. The sound of ocean through cracked windows provided nature's white noise machine. I fell asleep to the rhythm of waves my first night as sole owner of my existence. Tomorrow would bring whatever storm my family conjured. Tonight I had everything I needed, a home they couldn't forget, because they'd never been invited to remember. Sunday morning arrived with 12 missed calls, 38 text messages, and 19 voicemails. I made coffee before addressing any of them, grinding beans with methodical precision, while gray dawn lightened into pearl sky. The kitchen windows framed a view that still seemed impossible mine. I carried my mug onto the deck, breathing salt air that tasted like freedom, and finally powered on my phone to face the inevitable storm. Mother called immediately, as if she'd been watching for the precise moment my phone came online. Her voice burst through the speaker at maximum volume before I could adjust it. "Carmen Marie Martinez, what have you done? How dare you make this kind of decision without consulting your family? We've been up all night, worried sick." "Good morning to you too, Mom," I replied, keeping my tone deliberately calm. "I bought a house. People do it every day." "Not like this, sneaking around, hiding things, posting on social media for the world to see before telling your own parents your father is beside himself." Marcus had to take anxiety medication. The idea of Marcus requiring pharmaceutical intervention because I'd purchased property almost made me laugh. I sipped my coffee instead, letting her wine build without interruption. The tirade followed predictable patterns, accusations of selfishness, reminders of family obligation, guilt about their supposed worry. She never once asked about the house itself, never wondered what had driven me to make such a dramatic change. The oversight was so characteristic I barely noticed anymore. "Are you even listening to me?" she shrieked when my silence stretched too long. "I'm listening, Mom. You're upset I bought a house without telling you, but when exactly should I have mentioned it? During the birthday dinner you forgot to plan. In the family chat? I'm not included in. Maybe during one of those conversations where you ask about my life. Don't be dramatic. You know we've been busy with Marcus's situation. You've been busy with Marcus's situation for 32 years. The sharp intake of breath told me I'd crossed an invisible line. Good. Those lines had hemmed me in too long, defining acceptable behavior as whatever kept me small and manageable. I was done being manageable. Father took over the phone, his voice carrying that particular mix of authority and bewilderment he used when the world didn't align with his expectations. "Carmen, I need you to explain the finances. How did you afford a $600,000 house? If you've gotten involved in something illegal." "I work in tech, Dad," Senior VP at a Fortune 500 company. I make $275,000 a year base salary plus bonuses. I've been saving and investing for a decade. There's nothing illegal about fiscal responsibility." The silence stretched so long I wondered if we'd been disconnected. When he finally spoke, confusion had replaced accusation. 200. "But your mother said you were struggling. She said Marcus helps support you." "Mom says a lot of things that aren't true. When have you ever seen Marcus give anyone money? He didn't borrow first." "That's enough." Mother grabbed the phone back. "Your brother is going through a difficult time, and instead of helping your flaunting wealth, we didn't even know you had. How do you think this makes him feel?" "I honestly don't care how Marcus feels about my success. That's the point. I've spent my entire life making myself smaller so he could feel bigger. I'm done." The declaration hung between us like a severed rope bridge. I could hear muffled conversation, probably father trying to calm her down or strategize next attacks. My coffee had gone cold, but I didn't move to refresh it. The morning was too beautiful to waste indoors managing other people's emotions about my life choices. "Your Aunt Helen is devastated," Mother continued, shifting tactics. "She says you've betrayed family values, and your cousins think you've lost your mind running off to live alone like some hermit." "I'm not a hermit. I'm a homeowner. There's a significant difference." "Don't get smart with me, young lady. You may have forgotten where you come from, but we haven't. Family sticks together. Family supports each other. Family doesn't make major decisions in isolation." "Really? Like when you decided to remortgage your house for Marcus without asking if I could help? Or when you planned that Vegas trip for his birthday without checking if I wanted to contribute? Seems like family makes unilateral decisions all the time. I've just learned from your example." Marcus's voice suddenly dominated the call. He must have grabbed the phone while our parents processed my response. "Carmen, what the hell? I texted you about needing help with my investor meeting and you blow money on some beach house. Do you know how selfish that is?" Selfish. That's an interesting word choice from someone who's received over $800,000 in family support while contributing nothing back. That's different. I'm building something. I'm an entrepreneur. You just push buttons on computers. Those buttons I pushed generated $30 million in revenue last quarter. What did your last business generate besides a debt? You bitter... He caught himself before finishing the insult. "Just because you can't keep a man doesn't mean you should punish the family. We get it. You're jealous of what Jessica and I have, but this acting out is pathetic. Marcus, you're 30 years old living in a house our parents paid for driving a car they bought, failing at businesses they fund. I'm not jealous of your life. I'm relieved I didn't inherit the family talent for enabling. Goodbye." I hung up before he could respond, immediately blocking all 3 numbers. The relief felt physical, like removing 2 tight shoes after a long day. My phone continued buzzing with extended family attempts to breach my boundaries. I blocked those numbers too, each deletion carving out more space for peace. Aunt Helen managed to get through on her husband's phone. "Carmen, sweetheart, I know things have been hard, but running away isn't the answer. Your mother is in tears. Can't you see how you're hurting everyone? I'm 3 hours away, not across the ocean. I'm hurting no one by living my own life. If Mom's in tears because I bought a house with my own money, that says more about her than me." "But why didn't you tell anyone? Why all the secrecy?" "Because this reaction is exactly what I expected. Instead of congratulations on my achievement, I get accusations and guilt trips. Can you honestly say it would have gone differently if I'd announced it in advance?" Her pause spoke volumes. Family should be consulted on major decisions, she finally managed. "I'll remember that next time you're excluded from family group chats and forgotten on your birthday for 15 consecutive years." Is that what this is about? Carmen, holding grudges is poisonous. You need to forgive and move forward. I have moved forward, about 200 miles forward specifically, and I have never felt less poisoned in my life. I ended the call with cordial finality, adding her number to the blocked list. The sun had fully risen now, transforming the ocean into a carpet of diamonds. I made fresh coffee and scrambled eggs with vegetables from yesterday's farmer's market. The simple breakfast tasted like rebellion, each bite taken in my own kitchen on my own schedule without consideration for anyone else's timeline or dietary preferences. By noon, the attempts had evolved into email warfare. I skimmed them briefly before setting up an automated filter directing family addresses to a folder I'd review when emotionally prepared. The subject lines alone told the story: disappointed in your choices. Family emergency meeting. Can we talk like adults? My favorite came from a cousin I hadn't spoken to since high school. I always knew you thought you were better than us. Maybe I did think I was better. Better at recognizing dysfunction. Better at setting boundaries. Better at building rather than destroying. Better at choosing growth over stagnation. If that made me arrogant in their eyes, I'd wear the label with pride. I'd rather be arrogant in my ocean view home than humble in their shadow. Monday morning brought unexpected clarity through professional validation. I'd posted a follow-up on LinkedIn, sharing my milestone with the network I'd cultivated through years of conferences, collaborations, and late-night debugging sessions. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Comments poured in from industry leaders, former colleagues, and mentors who'd witnessed my journey from junior developer to senior leadership. Unlike my family's reaction, these messages celebrated rather than castigated. The contrast became even starker when I posted additional photos on Instagram. This time I included images from my office, the wall of awards they'd never asked about, the patent plaques they didn't know existed, the team photos from product launches that changed industry standards. I crafted the caption carefully. Since my house purchase shocked some people who thought I was struggling, here's a glimpse of what I've actually been building for the past decade. Senior VP of Technology at Tecton Industries. 3 patents pending. 40 incredible engineers on my team. Multiple industry awards. Turns out playing with computers can be quite lucrative. Grateful for everyone who saw my potential when family couldn't. The metrics exploded within hours. LinkedIn shares pushed the post to trending in tech circles. Comments began threading stories of similar family dynamics in high-achieving professionals. Women especially resonated with the narrative of minimized accomplishments, sharing their own experiences of success, dismissed by those who should have celebrated loudest. The validation felt like group therapy conducted at scale. Patricia Liu reposted with commentary that made me tear up. I've worked with Carmen Martinez for 3 years. She's the most brilliant engineering mind I've encountered, bar none. She debugged a system failure that saved the company millions while her family planned yet another party for her brother. Her success isn't surprising to anyone who actually knows her work. Congratulations on the house, Carmen. You deserve every square foot. My CEO, David Chen, added his own perspective. When we promoted Carmen to Senior VP, it was the easiest decision I've made. Her innovation has transformed our entire infrastructure. Companies regularly try to poach her with offers that would make your head spin. The fact that her family didn't know about her role or salary says everything about them. Nothing about her. The professional support created a snowball effect. Recruiters who'd been courting me for years emerged from woodwork with public congratulations and private offers. A major tech publication requested an interview about women in leadership roles who overcome family obstacles. Speaking engagement invitations multiplied. The very visibility my family had denied me suddenly felt inescapable. Then Jessica's message arrived. I almost deleted it unread, assuming Marcus's fiancé would parrot his entitlement, but something about the subject line, "You deserve to know the truth," made me pause. Her email shattered several illusions I hadn't realized I still held. Carmen, we've never really talked, which I now understand was by design. Marcus told me you were struggling with mental health issues and career failures. He said the family protected you by not putting pressure on your birthday or including you in stressful situations. He claimed he'd been sending you money monthly to help with bills. I'm ashamed to admit I believed him. But seeing your posts, reading the comments from your colleagues, learning about your actual position, I realize I've been with someone who lies as easily as breathing. He's been taking money from your parents while claiming he's supporting you. He shows off your achievements to his friends as his own. I found a presentation on his laptop that's literally your code with his name replacing yours. I'm leaving him, not just because of the lies about you, but because anyone who could diminish their sister's light to make themselves shine brighter is someone I can't build a life with. You deserve so much better than this family has given you. Congratulations on your beautiful home. I read the email 3 times each pass, revealing new layers of manipulation I'd been too close to see. Marcus hadn't just basked in parental favoritism, he'd actively cultivated it through strategic lies. The revelation reframed decades of dynamics, transforming confusion into clarity. No wonder my parents thought I needed constant help. Marcus had been painting me as a charity case while stealing my accomplishments for his own resume. The urge to forward Jessica's email to my parents was strong, but I resisted. They'd chosen their narrative long ago. Evidence wouldn't change beliefs they'd invested so much in maintaining. Instead, I responded to Jessica with compassion and an offer of coffee if she ever found herself in Monterey. Breaking free from toxic systems was lonely work that benefited from fellow travelers. My phone rang with an unknown number. Against better judgment, I answered. Aunt Martha's voice surprised me, the family black sheep who'd been excommunicated years before my birth. Carmen, I hope you don't mind. I got your number from a mutual connection. I saw your posts and wanted to reach out. Aunt Martha, I heard you were away. Her laugh held decades of understanding. Is that what they told you? I'm in Portland, darling, not prison. Though in our family, choosing your own path might as well be criminal. I was excommunicated for refusing to invest in your father's brother's scheme. Best decision I ever made. We talked for 2 hours. She unraveled family mythology with surgical precision, revealing patterns that predated my generation. The favoritism toward male children, the punishment of independence in women, the financial exploitation disguised as family loyalty. She'd built a successful import business, married a man who respected her autonomy, raised children who pursued their own dreams without apology. The hardest part, she admitted, was accepting they'd rather lose me than change their patterns. Your parents aren't evil, Carmen. They're trapped in cycles they can't see. Marcus is just the latest beneficiary of dysfunction they've normalized. But you broke free. That takes extraordinary courage. After we hung up, I sat on my deck processing the conversation. Martha's insights explained so much why my achievements threatened, rather than pleased, why independence was punished, rather than celebrated, why Marcus's failures were reframed as potential, while my successes were minimized as luck. The system required certain roles, and I'd refused my assigned part. The week progressed with continued revelations. Former classmates reached out with memories I'd suppressed. I remember your parents leaving your science fair presentation to watch Marcus's little league game. One wrote, "You won first place and had to call a taxi home." Teachers emerged with similar stories. "You were my brightest student in 20 years, my calculus professor emailed. I never understood why your family seemed angry at parent conferences when I praised your potential." Each message added evidence to a case I no longer needed to prosecute. The truth was evident to everyone except those who'd benefit from blindness. My success hadn't happened despite my family. It had required their neglect. Their indifference had forced me to develop self-reliance. Their favoritism had taught me that external validation meant nothing if it came from poisoned sources. Their emotional abandonment had prepared me for the beautiful solitude of my Ocean View home. By Friday, the story had taken on its own life. Tech blogs picked up the narrative. Women's professional groups shared it as inspiration. I received hundreds of messages from strangers who saw their own experiences reflected in mine. The visibility felt overwhelming but necessary. If my story helped one person recognize their worth beyond family assessment, the vulnerability was worthwhile. Marcus attempted contact through a work email, his message dripping with barely concealed rage. Happy now? Jessica left me and mom's on antidepressants because of your stunt. The whole family is in chaos. I hope your fancy house is worth destroying everyone who loved you. I forwarded the email to HR and legal documenting the harassment. His definition of love, one that required my diminishment for his elevation, wasn't something I'd mourn losing. The family chaos he described was simply long-suppressed truth breaking through carefully maintained facades. And yes, my fancy house was worth it. Every sunrise, every wave crash, every moment of peace in spaces where my existence was celebrated rather than tolerated made the price negligible. That evening, I hosted my first dinner party for local colleagues who'd become friends. We grilled fish on the deck, drank wine from proper glasses, told stories that didn't require footnotes about family dysfunction. As laughter filled my home, I realized this was what I'd been seeking: chosen family who saw me clearly and liked what they saw. The revelation hadn't just spread through social media, it had fundamentally altered my understanding of what love could look like when it wasn't conditional on accepting less than I deserved. Tuesday morning arrived with a shift in tactical approach from my family. The anger had metabolized into something more calculating: panic disguised as concern. My email filter had caught 17 messages overnight, but one subject line made me pause. Please read, Mom in hospital. I clicked it against my better judgment, finding a message from my father that reeked of manipulation despite its serious topic. Carmen, your mother collapsed yesterday from stress. The doctors say her blood pressure is dangerously high. She keeps asking for you. Whatever anger you're holding, please remember she's your mother. We're at Riverside Medical Room 302. I called the hospital, directly bypassing family dramatics for medical facts. The nurse confirmed my mother had been admitted for elevated blood pressure but was stable and scheduled for discharge that afternoon. Stress-related, she explained when I identified myself as the daughter. Very common, she'll need to monitor her diet and avoid emotional triggers. The professional distance in her tone suggested she'd seen plenty of families weaponize medical events. Within an hour, the messages escalated. Cousins sent photos of my mother in her hospital bed, looking appropriately wan against white sheets. Marcus texted from a new number. Are you happy now? This is what your selfishness caused. Aunt Helen left a voicemail sobbing about family unity and forgiveness. The coordinated guilt campaign would have been impressive if it weren't so transparent. My therapist, Dr. Sarah Winters, had scheduled a video session that afternoon. I'd started seeing her 6 months ago when the birthday patterns became too painful to ignore. She listened without judgment as I described the latest manipulation tactics, occasionally nodding as if checking off boxes on some invisible dysfunction bingo card. They're escalating because they've lost control, she observed. The hospital visit, whether genuine or exaggerated, is a classic move when boundaries threaten family systems. How are you feeling about it? Guilty, I admitted, which I know is the point, but also tired, exhausted by the emotional labor of parsing what's real from what's performance. Your mother's health is her responsibility, not yours. If stress from your independence caused medical issues, that says more about her inability to process change than your decision to buy a house. You can't make yourself smaller to regulate other people's blood pressure. The session helped fortify my resolve, but the family assault continued. By evening, they'd shifted from medical emergency to financial concern. My mother miraculously recovered enough to text, sent a message dripping with false casualness. Honey, Dad and I were reviewing finances for retirement. We had no idea you were doing so well. Could we talk about family financial planning? Maybe you could help with some investments. The request might have seemed reasonable from normal parents. From mine, it screamed agenda. I responded simply, Glad you're feeling better. I work with a financial advisor who handles my portfolio. I'm sure you can find someone locally for retirement planning. Her response came quickly, but family should help. Family Marcus mentioned you might want to invest in his new company. It would mean so much to him to have sister support. There it was. The real reason for the panic. They'd been counting on money they didn't know I had for plans they'd made without consulting me. My success hadn't just disrupted their emotional ecosystem, it had derailed financial schemes built on assumptions of my poverty. Wednesday brought more revelations through unexpected sources. My father's brother, Uncle Robert, called from Phoenix. We'd barely spoken in years, but his voice carried surprising warmth. Carmen, I wanted you to know not everyone in the family agrees with how you're being treated. Your success doesn't surprise me at all. You were always the bright one. Thanks, Uncle Robert. That means a lot. I need to tell you something. Your parents have been asking everyone for money. They've borrowed against the house multiple times for Marcus, and they're underwater now. When they found out about your position and salary, they started making plans. Big plans. I thought you should know. The final piece clicked into place. Their panic wasn't about losing me. It was about losing access to resources they'd already mentally spent. I thanked Robert for his honesty, filing the information alongside Jessica's revelations and Aunt Martha's historical context. The full picture was uglier than I'd imagined, but somehow less painful than the confusion of not knowing. Thursday introduced a new character to the drama, Pastor Williams from my parents' church. His voicemail carried the particular tone of religious authority mixed with family friend overreach. Carmen, I've been counseling your parents through this difficult time. I'd like to remind you of the fifth commandment about honoring thy father and mother. Perhaps we could arrange a family meeting in my office neutral ground for healing. God doesn't want families torn apart over material things. I drafted several responses before settling on simple decline. I appreciate your concern, but I'm not interested in mediation. I wish my family well from a distance. His follow-up email suggested I was running from God's plan and needed prayer for my hardened heart. I added his address to the blocked list, wondering if they'd work through their entire social circle before accepting my boundaries. By Friday, exhaustion competed with dark amusement at their escalating tactics. They tried anger guilt, medical emergency, financial enticement, and religious pressure. What next? The answer came via certified mail, a formal letter from a lawyer friend of the family, suggesting I might have fiduciary duties to parents who had invested in my upbringing. The legal threat was toothless. I forwarded it to Tecton's legal team, who confirmed as much, but the attempt spoke volumes about their desperation. My new life in Monterey continued developing despite the background noise of family chaos. I joined the sailing club, attended a pottery class, made friends with the couple who ran the beachfront cafe. Each normal interaction felt revolutionary after years of navigating family dysfunction. When people asked about relatives visiting my new home, I simply said they lived far away. 3 hours might as well have been 3,000 when measured in emotional distance. Saturday morning brought the most honest communication yet. My mother called from her personal cell, voice stripped of performance, for perhaps the first time in years. Carmen, I don't understand what happened. We gave Marcus everything because he seemed to need it more. You were always so capable, so independent. I thought you didn't need us. I needed parents who saw me, Mom, who celebrated my achievements instead of diminishing them, who remembered my birthday without making it about Marcus. I needed to matter as more than background support for the golden child. But you left us. You just left. I left a dynamic that was killing me slowly. I chose myself for once. That's not abandonment. It's self-preservation. Your father says we should cut you off completely if you won't come home and talk. I am home, Mom, and you can't cut off someone who's already gone. I wish you peace, but I won't sacrifice mine for it anymore. The call ended with her crying, but they were tears I couldn't heal. Some bridges burned from both ends, meeting in a middle that no longer existed. I spent the afternoon sailing, learning to read wind patterns and adjust sails accordingly. The instructor complimented my quick adaptation, not knowing I'd spent a lifetime navigating invisible storms. That evening, I updated my social media with photos from the sailing club, me at the helm, sun on my face, genuine joy evident in every pixel. The caption read simply, "Learning new skills at 32. It's never too late to chart your own course." The likes and comments came from my new world. Colleagues, neighbors, chosen family who celebrated growth rather than demanding stagnation. Whatever panic my biological family felt about losing control would have to be processed without my participation. I'd given them 32 years to see me clearly. Now it was my turn to disappear into a horizon they'd never thought to look toward. Sunday marked 2 weeks since my house reveal, and I woke with unusual clarity about what needed to happen next. The morning fog clung to the coastline as I made coffee, drafting the most important email of my life on my laptop while watching surfers navigate waves below. Every word required precision. This would be my definitive statement on family relations going forward. I opened with acknowledging the chaos of recent weeks, taking responsibility for the shock of my revelation while refusing to apologize for the life choices that prompted it. The meat of the message laid out boundaries with surgical precision. After considerable reflection, I'm establishing the following boundaries for any future relationship. 1. My birthday will be acknowledged and celebrated, or I will not attend any family birthday celebrations. 2. My career and achievements will be spoken of accurately and with respect. Any diminishment or false narrative ends all contact immediately. 3. Financial requests are permanently off the table. I will not fund Marcus's ventures, contribute to family bailouts, or be treated as an emergency ATM. 4. The family group chat exclusion ends now. Either I'm included in all family communications or I participate in none. 5. Therapy is non-negotiable. If you want a relationship with me, family counseling must happen first. I'll provide 3 therapist recommendations. 6. My home is my sanctuary. Visits happen by invitation only with advance notice and mutual agreement. 7. Respect for my choices is mandatory. Any guilt trips, manipulation tactics, or emotional blackmail results in immediate no-contact periods. These aren't suggestions or starting points for negotiation. They're requirements for having me in your life. I understand if you find them unacceptable. I've mourned the family I wished for and accepted the one I have. Your choice now is whether to evolve or remain stuck in patterns that no longer include me. I listed specific examples for each boundary, creating an exhaustive document that left no room for misinterpretation. The birthday section detailed every forgotten year with receipts, screenshots of Marcus's parties during my birthday weeks, their own words about being too busy to remember. The career section included LinkedIn screenshots, salary verification, and quotes from their messages calling my work computer stuff while praising Marcus's failed ventures. The email stretched to 3,000 words by the time I finished. Part manifesto, part legal document, part therapy session distilled into prose. I attached photos of the family group chat. I discovered proof of their deliberate exclusions. Added Jessica's email about Marcus's lies. Included Aunt Martha's number with permission to verify the family patterns that predated me. Before sending, I created a separate email to extended family members who'd been drawn into the drama. This one was shorter but equally clear. I understand you've received a particular narrative about recent events. I'm not asking you to choose sides, only to respect my decision to live independently. My door is open to those who can engage with me directly, rather than through the filter of my parents' interpretation. Those who cannot are welcome to maintain whatever distance feels comfortable. I scheduled both emails to send at noon, then blocked all family numbers and social media for 7 days. They needed time to process without ability to immediately react, and I needed space to exist without managing their emotions. The relief felt like removing a tooth that had ached for decades, painful but necessary for healing. Monday arrived with blessed silence. I threw myself into work leading a major presentation for potential Japanese partners interested in our automation systems. The complexity required total focus, leaving no mental space for family drama. My team performed brilliantly, securing preliminary agreements worth $40 million in potential revenue. The achievement felt more significant for being experienced without need for external validation. Tuesday brought my first sailing lesson since setting boundaries. The instructor, Carlos, noticed my improved confidence immediately. "You're different today," he observed, "less tense. The boat responds better when you're relaxed." We practiced tacking into the wind, a maneuver that required trusting the boat's design while making necessary adjustments. The metaphor wasn't lost on me. By Wednesday, Eleanor next door had become my unofficial boundary accountability partner. She'd lived through her own family estrangement decades ago and recognized the signs of someone processing liberation. We shared dinner on her patio, swapping stories of manipulation tactics like war veterans comparing scars. "The first month is hardest," she advised. "You'll want to check in to see if they're changing. They're not. Change requires recognition they're not capable of yet. Maybe never." Thursday tested my resolve when a package arrived from my childhood home. Inside, my mother had sent photos spanning decades, family vacations, holiday gatherings, milestone moments, all carefully curated to show happy families, though I noticed my presence diminishing in later years. The manipulation was obvious but effective. I spent an hour crying over what never really was before storing the box in the garage. Dr. Winters praised my boundary email during our Friday session. "This is doctorate-level boundary setting," she said. "Clear, specific, with consequences outlined. How are you feeling about the silence?" "Relieved and terrified," I admitted. Part of me expects them to show up any moment. Another part hopes they will just to prove they care enough to fight. The logical part knows silence is their most likely response. Silence is a response. It tells you everything about their priorities. Your boundaries require them to change fundamental patterns. That's harder than losing you from their perspective. The weekend arrived with confirmation of her prediction. 7 days of silence from immediate family, though Aunt Martha called with support and updates. According to her sources, my parents had consulted lawyers about forcing family mediation, been laughed out of offices, and were now telling everyone I'd had a mental breakdown. Marcus was spinning tales of my jealousy over his success. The narrative protected their egos while ensuring I'd never return to fold. I spent Saturday at the farmer's market building relationships with vendors who knew nothing of my family drama. The cheesemaker remembered my preference for aged manchego. The flower seller saved special blooms because I'd mentioned loving ranunculus. These micro-connections felt more substantial than decades of blood relation. Sunday afternoon brought unexpected contact. Uncle Robert sent a text through his wife's phone. "Received your emails. Boundaries are reasonable. Your parents are in denial, but some family members see clearly. Stay strong." The validation from within the family system meant more than I'd expected. Not everyone was trapped in dysfunction. Some recognized patterns and chose differently, even if quietly. I responded with simple thanks and my new address, leaving doors open for those who could walk through them respectfully. As week 3 began, I settled into rhythms that felt sustainable. Morning coffee, watching sunrise over ocean. Work that challenged and fulfilled. Evenings with chosen family who celebrated rather than tolerated my presence. Weekends exploring coastal trails and local culture. The life I'd built in secret was becoming simply life, no qualifiers needed. The family silence stretched on, but its weight lessened daily. I'd said what needed saying, offered what felt reasonable established protection for my well-being. Whether they could meet those basic requirements would reveal everything about our potential future. Their choice to engage or retreat belonged to them alone. Mine was already made, signed in mortgage documents, and sealed with Pacific salt air. My boundary email became something of a template among my support network. Other women dealing with similar dynamics asked permission to adapt sections for their own use. I agreed readily, understanding how isolation compounded these situations. If my words helped others articulate their worth, the vulnerability of sharing them publicly felt worthwhile. 3 weeks post-boundaries patterns emerged. Extended family members began reaching out individually, testing waters outside the established system. Some cousins admitted they'd experienced similar favoritism. An aunt confessed she'd noticed the birthday pattern but felt powerless to intervene. These quiet rebellions suggested cracks in the family facade that my departure had widened into fissures. The 4th week of silence shattered on a mundane Thursday morning. I was reviewing code deployments when our receptionist called, her voice carrying unusual tension. "Ms. Martinez, there's a Marcus Martinez here demanding to see you. He doesn't have an appointment and seems agitated." My blood chilled despite the climate-controlled office environment. "Please don't let him up. I'll come down." I alerted security on my way to the elevator, requesting discreet backup without causing scene. The descent to the lobby felt endless, each floor marking another preparation for confrontation I'd hoped to avoid. Through the glass doors, I could see Marcus pacing like a caged predator, his usual casual arrogance replaced by something rawer and more dangerous. He spotted me immediately, charging forward before security intercepted. "Carmen, we need to talk, now." "This is my workplace, Marcus. You can't just show up." "Can't show up. Like you couldn't mention buying a house or having money while I'm drowning. Family doesn't mean anything to you." His volume drew attention from everyone in the vicinity. Employees passing through the lobby slowed to watch the drama unfold. Security officers flanked him, ready to intervene at my signal. The brother I'd protected and subsidized for years stood there radiating entitlement and rage, completely oblivious to the inappropriateness of his actions. "Let's step outside," I suggested, wanting to minimize the spectacle. "No, you've been avoiding us for a month. Mom cries every day. Dad had to sell his golf clubs to cover bills, and you're here playing executive while your family falls apart." "My family's financial problems aren't my responsibility, Marcus. They never were." "Easy for you to say with your fancy salary and beach house. You were supposed to help with my investor meeting. That deal fell through because of you." The security chief, a former military man named James, stepped forward. "Sir, I need you to lower your voice and step back." Marcus turned his fury on James. "Don't tell me what to do. I'm talking to my sister about family business." "You're causing a disturbance in a private building. Ms. Martinez, would you like us to escort him out?" Before I could respond, Marcus lunged past security, grabbing my arm with force that would leave bruises. "You're not dismissing me like this. You owe me." The rest happened in seconds. Security intervened professionally, restraining Marcus while he screamed obscenities about betrayal and abandonment. I stood frozen, watching my brother transform into someone unrecognizable, though perhaps he'd always been this person beneath parental protection. "Should we call the police?" James asked, maintaining his hold on Marcus, who continued struggling. "Yes," I heard myself say. "I want this documented." The rage in Marcus's eyes shifted to shock. "You're calling the cops on your own brother over a conversation. Over assault and harassment at my workplace. You grabbed me. You're threatening me. This isn't a conversation. It's an attack." Police arrived within minutes, taking statements while Marcus alternated between fury and self-pity. He'd driven 3 hours to confront me, fueled by grievance, and what officers suspected was more than coffee. The breathalyzer confirmed he was legally drunk at 10 in the morning. My successful enabled brother was arrested in my workplace lobby for assault, public intoxication, and trespassing. I'm not pressing full charges. I told the officers, but I want a restraining order. He can't come near my home or workplace. As they led him away, Marcus shouted over his shoulder, "Jessica left because of you. My life is ruined because of you. I hope you're happy in your perfect house while everyone who loved you suffers." The lobby fell silent after his departure. My colleagues stood frozen, processing the drama they'd witnessed. I straightened my blazer, thanked security, and walked to the elevator with as much dignity as I could muster. Only when my office door closed did I allow myself to shake. Patricia arrived within minutes carrying tea and tissues. "That was your brother." "Unfortunately. The one your parents spent $800,000 supporting." "The very same." She sat across from my desk, her presence steady and non-judgmental. "You know none of that was true, right? Jessica didn't leave because of you. Your success didn't ruin his life. He's just a 30-year-old man who never learned consequences exist." I finished. "I know, but knowing and feeling are different things." The HR director knocked, entering with legal counsel. We spent 2 hours documenting the incident, reviewing security footage, and filing necessary paperwork. Tecton took workplace safety seriously, and Marcus had threatened not just me, but the company's secure environment. The restraining order would be expedited given the clear evidence. By afternoon, the incident had reached my parents. My phone, still set to filter their messages, showed 17 attempts at contact. I read their emails with detached fascination. Not one expressed concern for my safety or condemned Marcus's actions. Instead, they berated me for humiliating him, for involving police in family matters, for continuing my vendetta against their precious son. "He only wanted to talk," my mother wrote. "Did you have to destroy his life over a misunderstanding?" I forwarded the security footage to their email without comment. The video clearly showed Marcus grabbing me, security intervening, his continued aggression. Let them explain away visual evidence of their son's violence. Let them justify the unjustifiable one more time. Jessica reached out that evening with a different perspective. "I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. This is partly my fault. When I left him, I mentioned your success as one reason I'd lost respect for him. He fixated on that instead of his own behavior." "His fixations aren't your responsibility," I assured her, "or mine. He made choices today that belong entirely to him." "Still, I wanted you to know I've been in therapy since leaving, learning about toxic family systems, enabling patterns, how they create people like Marcus. Your boundaries inspired me to set my own. I'm grateful, even if the process is painful." We talked for an hour about recovery, growth, and the strange grief of mourning people who still lived but couldn't exist safely in our lives. She was moving to Seattle, starting fresh with hard-won wisdom about red flags and deal breakers. I wished her well, knowing her journey toward health would be its own navigation. The restraining order was approved Friday morning. Marcus would be legally required to stay 500 feet from me, my home and my workplace. Violation meant immediate arrest. The document felt like paper armor, flimsy but necessary protection against someone who shared my DNA but not my values. That weekend, I processed the workplace confrontation with Dr. Winters. "He showed you exactly who he is," she observed. "Not who your parents pretend he is, not who he pretends to be, but his actual self when denied what he feels entitled to. How does that clarity feel?" "Validating and heartbreaking," I admitted. "Part of me still loves the brother I thought I had, even knowing he never existed. The real Marcus is a stranger who happens to share my memories." "Grief for imaginary people is still real grief. You're mourning the brother you deserved while protecting yourself from the one you got. That's incredibly difficult psychological work." I spent Sundays sailing, letting wind and waves wash away the week's trauma. Carlos noticed my distraction, but didn't pry, simply adjusted our lesson to focus on basic maneuvers that required presence without complexity. The ocean didn't care about family drama or workplace scenes. It simply existed, vast and indifferent and somehow comforting in its constancy. As sunset painted the sky in impossible colors, I realized Marcus's meltdown had given me an unexpected gift, public validation of private truths. Colleagues who'd met my family at company events now understood the dynamics I'd navigated. Security footage provided undeniable evidence of patterns I'd struggled to articulate. His arrest record created legal documentation of danger I'd always sensed but never proven. The golden child had tarnished himself beyond repair, not through my actions, but his own. Whatever narrative my parents constructed around his arrest would require Olympic-level mental gymnastics. Their darling son, the one they'd bankrupted themselves supporting, had been handcuffed in the lobby of the company where their forgotten daughter thrived. I raised a glass of wine to the Pacific, toasting the brother I'd never had, and the freedom his meltdown cemented. Sometimes the best gifts came wrapped in police reports and restraining orders. Sometimes clarity arrived drunk at 10 a.m., screaming truths everyone pretended not to know. Sometimes the golden child's fall from grace was exactly what the scapegoat needed to finally fly free. 6 weeks after the birthday that changed everything, my doorbell rang on a rain-soaked Saturday morning. Through the security camera I'd installed after Marcus's arrest, I saw my parents standing on my porch. They looked older somehow, shoulders bent, underweight heavier than the Oregon storm. My mother clutched a bakery box while my father held an umbrella that did little against the horizontal rain. I watched them for a full minute before deciding to answer. "You could have called," I said through the barely opened door. "You wouldn't have answered," my mother replied. For once her assessment was accurate. 5 minutes, that's all. They entered my sanctuary with the awkwardness of vampires crossing a threshold. My mother's eyes darted everywhere, taking in the renovation choices, the ocean view, the life I'd built without their input or approval. My father stood stiffly near the door as if proximity to an exit might make this easier. "The house is beautiful," my mother managed. Thank you. Why are you here?" She set the bakery box on my counter with shaking hands. Through the clear lid, I could see a small cake with "Happy Belated Birthday" in purple frosting. The gesture felt both too little and too much a pastry bandage for decades of wounds. "We came to apologize and to talk about moving forward. I set clear boundaries 4 weeks ago. Which ones are you prepared to meet?" My father finally spoke, his CEO voice reduced to something smaller. "Carmen, you have to understand. We did our best. Marcus needed more help." "Stop." I held up my hand. "If you came to justify 3 decades of favoritism, you can leave now. I'm not interested in explanations for inexcusable behavior." "We're trying." My mother's composure cracked. "Do you know how hard it is to admit we failed you? To see that I created this situation? Do you know how hard it was to be forgotten? To achieve everything I have while being told I'm nothing? To watch you pour hundreds of thousands into Marcus's failures while I worked 3 jobs through college?" Silence stretched between us, filled only by rain drumming against windows. My father moved to the living room, staring at the ocean as if it might provide answers. When he turned back, tears marked his weathered face. "We were wrong, not just about small things, but about everything. The birthday party planning, we found the group chat, saw what we wrote, how we planned to avoid your celebrations. I can't explain why we thought that was acceptable. Because you never saw me as a full person," I'd said simply. "I was an accessory to Marcus's life, not my own human being, with needs and worth." My mother sank onto my couch, aging a decade in the motion. "You were so independent. Even as a child, you never seemed to need us. Marcus cried if we looked away. You built entire worlds in your room alone." Children who don't cry still need parents. They just learn earlier that crying doesn't bring help. The truth hung between us like a blade. I'd written this scene 1,000 times in therapy, but the reality felt both smaller and more significant than imagination. These were just people flawed and human, sauced in patterns they'd never questioned until forced. The therapist, the one you recommended, my father said quietly, we've been going, Dr. Chen. She's helping us see things, patterns from our own families, expectations about sons and daughters we never examined. How many sessions? 3 so far. We have another Tuesday. 3 sessions couldn't undo 30 years, but it was 3 more than I'd expected. I moved to my reading chair, needing distance from their familiar gravity. What else? Marcus, my mother whispered, we've cut him off financially, completely, his arrest. Seeing him attack you, it changed something, or maybe just revealed what was always there. He's living with friends, blaming everyone but himself. We told him therapy was required for any contact, but he refused. Said we were choosing you over him. My father's voice carried wonder as if the concept of choosing me was still foreign. And the family group chat? Disbanded. We started a new one with you included from the beginning. Only a few cousins so far, but it's honest. No hidden conversations. They were hitting my requirements like a checklist, which both impressed and concerned me. Real change required more than box ticking. It demanded fundamental shifts in worldview that took years, not weeks. Why now, I asked. Why not after my MIT graduation or my first promotion or any birthday in the past 15 years? What makes this moment different? My parents exchanged looks that spoke of long discussions. Finally, my mother answered with painful honesty. Because you left. Actually left. Not just physically, but completely. We kept waiting for you to come back to fall in line to accept the role we'd assigned. When you bought this house, when you showed the world what we'd refused to see, we couldn't pretend anymore. So it took me having money for you to value me. No. My father's vehemence surprised us all. It took you showing us we'd never known you at all. The daughter we thought we had, struggling needing Marcus's support working some computer job. She never existed. You let us believe that fiction, because we made it clear we couldn't handle the truth. And you're ready for truth now? We're trying to be. I studied them with eyes trained by distance. They looked diminished in my space, uncertain in ways their previous authority had never allowed. The power dynamic had shifted irreversibly. They came as supplicants to the daughter they'd forgotten, asking for chances they'd never offered. Here's what I'm willing to consider, I said finally. Continue therapy, weekly, not monthly. Do the actual work, not just attendance. In 6 months, if Dr. Chen believes you've made genuine progress, we can try a family session. 1. From there, we'll see. 6 months. My mother's voice pitched high. But the holidays? Will pass without me. You've had 32 years of holidays where I was physically present but emotionally erased. You can handle a few where I'm physically absent but working toward emotional presence. That's fair, my father said, quieting my mother's protest. More than fair. We'll do the work. They rose to leave movements careful, as if I might startle and revoke even this limited opening. At the door, my mother turned back. The cake. I know it doesn't fix anything, but it's carrot cake, your favorite, not Marcus's chocolate. I wanted to get something right. The small accuracy amid vast wrongs nearly undid me. Thank you. After they left, I sat with the cake and complex emotions. They'd driven 3 hours in a storm to spend 20 minutes being held accountable. They'd started therapy, cut off. Marcus acknowledged truths that threatened their entire self-concept. It wasn't enough, might never be enough, but it was movement. Eleanor appeared an hour later with wine and wisdom. Saw the Washington plates. Parents, unfortunately. How'd it go? They're trying, or performing trying. Time will tell the difference. We sat on my covered deck, watching storm waves crash against cliffs. The violence of the water meeting stone felt appropriate for processing family collisions. Eleanor shared her own story of attempted reconciliation with parents who disowned her for marrying outside their faith. The meetings, the promises, the temporary progress before old patterns reasserted. Some people can change, she concluded. Most can't. The trick is protecting yourself while staying open to possibility. That evening, I wrote in the journal Dr. Winters had recommended. The visit had destabilized my carefully constructed peace, but not destroyed it. My parents had entered my home as guests, not authorities. They'd asked rather than demanded. They'd heard no without tantrum or threat. Small victories, but victories nonetheless. Jessica called later with her own family update. My parents are struggling to understand why I left Marcus. They keep asking what he did wrong, as if being himself wasn't enough. Your story helped me explain about patterns and enabling. They're starting to get it. Change ripples outward, I observed. Sometimes breaking one pattern forces examination of others. Did you ever think your birthday rebellion would inspire so many people? I just wanted to be remembered. The rest happened on its own. We talked about boundaries and brave choices until rain softened into mist. By the time we hung up, my equilibrium had returned. My parents' visit hadn't shattered my new life. If anything, it confirmed the necessity of distance and the power of requirements. They could choose to meet me in health or remain in dysfunction. Either way, I'd be here in my ocean sanctuary, finally visible to myself if no one else. The cake sat untouched on my counter, its belated message both progress and reminder. I cut a small piece, tasting carrots and cream cheese and the faintest hope that people could choose growth over comfort. It wasn't my birthday anymore, but every day in this house felt like celebration. Every day I woke up, seen even if only by my own eyes, was worth more than 3 decades of invisible birthdays. I packaged the rest of the cake for tomorrow's sailing club potluck. My chosen family would enjoy it without knowing its significance. Sometimes the best gift parents could give was recognition that their child had grown beyond needing their gifts. Sometimes the most powerful choice was letting them try to earn what they'd squandered from a distance safe enough to survive their likely failure. 1 year later, December the 22nd arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that made Monterey shine like polished glass. I woke naturally at 6, no alarm needed body, attuned to rhythms that felt sustainable rather than survival-based. The morning ritual I'd cultivated, coffee on the deck journaling while watching surfers brave winter swells, stretching into yoga poses that released rather than stored tension, felt like luxury that had become necessity. Today marked my 33rd birthday, but more significantly, it was the first I'd orchestrated entirely on my terms. The guest list read like a love letter to chosen family Patricia and her partner flying in from Seattle, Eleanor hosting preparatory chaos, next-door sailing club friends who'd become weekend constants, and surprisingly Aunt Martha driving down from Portland with her husband. I need a count for the caterer. Eleanor called over the fence we'd had lowered for easier conversation. Are we still expecting 23 now? My team decided to make it a surprise gathering, but Patricia spoiled it yesterday. Good problems to have, dear. The morning progressed with intention rather than frenzy. I baked my grandmother's cornbread recipe, the one she'd taught me during stolen kitchen moments when Marcus demanded attention elsewhere. The familiar motions of measuring and mixing felt like communion with the woman who'd seen me even when her son couldn't. Her photo sat on my mantel now, prominent among images of the life I'd built. Patricia arrived at noon with Seattle rain still clinging to her jacket. Happy birthday to someone who actually deserves celebration, she announced, producing a bottle of champagne worth more than my parents had ever spent on my birthdays combined. You didn't have to... Stop. You revolutionized our entire platform architecture while managing a team through the most complex merger in company history. You deserve champagne that costs more than Marcus's latest bail money. We laughed with the ease of friendship forged through late-night debugging sessions and mutual respect. She'd become more than a colleague over the past year, evolving into the sister I'd chosen rather than the brother I'd survived. Her presence in my home felt like completion of a circle I'd started drawing the day I signed mortgage papers. By 3 o'clock, my house hummed with preparation energy. The sailing club arrived en masse, transforming my deck into a seafood grilling station. Carlos supervised with the authority of someone who taught me to read wind patterns and trust my instincts. "Remember when you couldn't even tie a bowline?" he teased. "Now you're racing catamarans." "Some of us are late bloomers," I replied, accepting the gentle ribbing that came from genuine affection. Dr. Sarah Winters arrived with her wife, having transitioned from therapist to friend after we'd completed our formal work 6 months prior. "I don't usually attend client celebrations," she'd said when accepting the invitation, "but you were never usual, and this feels more like witnessing someone's graduation." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. My parents had missed my actual graduations, but the people who'd helped me graduate from dysfunction to health showed up with bells on. As afternoon melted into evening, the gathering took shape organically. No forced activities or scheduled events, just people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company, sharing food and stories. The potluck table groaned under contributions that reflected our diversity. Eleanor's legendary crab dip fusion tacos from the sailing crew, Patricia's attempt at Korean BBQ that was more enthusiasm than accuracy. "Speech," someone called out as sunset approached. The group gathered on the deck, glasses raised with everything from champagne to kombucha. I stood before them, this assembly of humans who'd proven that family was verb rather than noun. A year ago, I spent my birthday alone in an empty apartment, forgotten by blood but preparing to remember myself. Today, I'm surrounded by people who see me not as supporting cast in someone else's story, but as the protagonist of my own. You've taught me that being chosen is infinitely more powerful than being related. Thank you for choosing to be here, for choosing to stay, for choosing to celebrate not just today, but all the small victories that led here. To chosen family, Eleanor raised her glass, the toast echoing across the deck. As we drank to connection born of decision rather than DNA, my phone buzzed with a text. I almost ignored it, but the sender surprised me, my mother. "Happy birthday, Carmen. We wanted to respect your boundaries about contact, but couldn't let today pass without acknowledgement. Dad and I are in therapy every week. Dr. Chen says we're making progress. We hope someday to earn the chance to celebrate with you properly. For now, know that you're remembered. Really remembered. Not just today, but every day we work to understand the damage we caused. We love you even if we learn too late how to show it." I read it twice before showing Patricia, who whistled low. "That's actually not terrible." "It's progress," I agreed, pocketing the phone. "Maybe someday it'll be enough. Today, this is enough." The party continued past midnight, evolving from dinner to dancing to intimate conversations in corners of my home that had learned laughter. Jessica arrived late, having driven from San Francisco where she'd started a new job. Her transformation over the year rivaled mine. Confident where she'd been, diminished, clear-eyed where she'd been gaslit. "Marcus tried to friend request me last week," she mentioned during a quiet moment. "His profile says he's working at a car dealership, living with roommates, still blaming everyone else from what mutual friends say." "Sounds about right." "Your parents really cut him off completely. He can't comprehend it." "They're trying to change. Whether it sticks?" I shrugged, unwilling to let their drama infiltrate this sacred evening. As the last guest departed near 2 a.m., Eleanor helped me survey the controlled chaos. Plates stacked in the kitchen furniture, slightly askew from impromptu dancing, the ghosts of laughter still echoing off walls. My home looked lived in, loved and celebrated in everything it was meant to be. "How does 33 feel?" Eleanor asked, settling into what had become her favorite chair during our regular tea sessions. "Like arriving somewhere I was always meant to be, just later than expected. Like that Rumi quote about letting yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love." "It will not lead you astray," she completed. "No, my dear, it certainly didn't." After she left, I stood on my deck in the profound quiet that follows joyful noise. The ocean continued its eternal conversation with the shore, indifferent to human celebrations, but somehow blessing them with its constancy. 33 felt like a beginning rather than another year accumulated. It felt like the first birthday of my real life, celebrated by people who knew my actual name. I thought about the girl who'd spent birthdays waiting for phones that never rang, making excuses for family who couldn't be bothered to remember. She deserved acknowledgement too, that past self who'd survived decades of erasure to arrive here. I raised my final glass of the evening to her endurance and eventual courage to choose visibility, even when it meant standing alone. The house settled around me with familiar creaks and sighs. In the morning, there would be cleanup and thank you texts and the return to routine that felt nothing like the rut I'd once inhabited. But tonight, I sat with the fullness of being thoroughly seen and celebrated, of building traditions that honored rather than diminished, of discovering that the best birthday gift was the life I'd given myself permission to live. Somewhere in Washington, my parents were possibly sleeping better for having sent that text. Marcus was probably bitter in his shared apartment, still unable to comprehend consequences. The extended family continued their patterns with one less scapegoat to absorb their dysfunction. And here in Monterey, the forgotten daughter had become an unforgettable woman, not through their recognition, but her own. 33 candles would have been too many for the cake Patricia had secretly arranged. Instead, she'd had the baker inscribe "Year 1 of Being Seen" in elegant script. The photos from the evening would show genuine smiles, authentic connection, and the kind of joy that comes from being known rather than merely noticed. This was how birthdays felt when they weren't afterthoughts or obligations, but celebrations of existence that mattered. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. Tonight, I was exactly where I belonged, surrounded by evidence that choosing yourself first created space for others to choose you right back. The new tradition wasn't about parties or presents, but presence. The radical act of showing up fully as yourself and attracting those who celebrated, rather than tolerated, that wholeness. Another December the 22nd arrived with the kind of golden morning that made California winters feel like blessings. My 34th birthday began not with silence, but with messages flooding my phone from across the globe. Former mentees from the program I'd launched, colleagues from Tokyo to Dublin, friends from sailing clubs up and down the coast. Each notification reminded me how far I'd traveled from that morning 2 years ago when I'd stared at an empty screen. And "Morning, birthday girl," though Eleanor called from her garden where she was already tending roses that bloomed despite the season. "The caterer just confirmed for tonight. 50 guests. Remember when you worried no one would come?" I laughed, accepting the tea she passed over our shortened fence. The guest list for tonight's celebration had grown organically, limited more by space than invitation. My deck would host a mix of chosen family, professional admirers, and surprisingly my parents. Their first visit in 8 months of careful boundary navigation. The doorbell rang at 9 sharp. Through the window, I saw my parents standing with careful posture, holding a plant instead of cut flowers. Progress. They'd learned I preferred living things to dying gestures. Their therapy showed in small ways: the pause before speaking, the lack of assumption about hugs, the way they'd ask permission to attend rather than expecting invitation. "Happy birthday, Carmen." My mother said, her voice steady. "Thank you for allowing us to share it." The formality felt appropriate for our careful reconstruction. 8 months of family therapy with Dr. Chen had revealed depths of dysfunction neither of them had recognized. Their own childhoods, riddled with similar patterns, had programmed behaviors they'd never questioned until forced. The work was hard, sometimes brutal, but they'd stayed committed even when Marcus raged about their betrayal. "We have something for you," my father said, producing an envelope. Not a gift exactly, more an acknowledgement. Inside was a donation receipt. They'd contributed $50,000 to a scholarship fund for women in STEM, specifically designated for students estranged from families. The name on the fund made my throat tight: the Carmen Martinez Excellence Award for Independent Achievers. "We can't undo the past," my mother explained, "but maybe we can help other forgotten daughters find their way." I hugged them. Then the first genuine embrace in years. They felt smaller somehow, or maybe I'd just grown beyond the intimidation their disapproval once carried. We spent the morning talking on my deck, catching up on their therapy revelations and my latest product launch. The conversation felt like speaking a new language we were all still learning. "Marcus," I asked, eventually needing to know. Still angry, still blaming. "We've maintained our boundaries. No money, no enabling, no contact without accountability. He's surviving, working. Maybe hitting bottom will eventually lead to growth." "Maybe," I agreed, though we all knew some people preferred familiar dysfunction to difficult change. By afternoon, preparations were in full swing. Patricia had arrived with a tech crew that included my former team and current collaborators. They'd transformed my living room into a presentation space, mysterious equipment covered with sheets. "Trust me," she insisted when I questioned the setup. Jessica appeared with her new fiancé, a woman who radiated the kind of quiet strength that suggested she'd never tolerate Marcus-style manipulation. Their happiness felt like additional vindication. Jessica had chosen growth over patterns, love over conditioning. She'd sent Marcus a wedding invitation out of courtesy, but didn't expect response. As sunset approached my house, filled with meaningful chaos, the sailing club arrived en masse, joining colleagues who'd flown in for the occasion. Aunt Martha held court in the kitchen, sharing family stories that contextualized dysfunction across generations. The integration felt surreal, professional success and personal growth occupying the same space, proving they'd never been mutually exclusive. Patricia clinked a glass as twilight painted the ocean in impossible purples. "Before we toast the birthday girl, we have a presentation. Carmen, would you sit here?" Confused but trusting, I took the indicated seat. The sheets came off the equipment, revealing a projection setup. The lights dimmed, and suddenly my wall displayed a video that took my breath away. The Carmen Martinez story, how one woman's boundaries inspired thousands, appeared in elegant text. What followed was a 20-minute documentary my team had secretly created. They'd interviewed colleagues, mentees, even strangers who'd found my story online and used it as catalyst for their own transformations. Woman after woman shared how my boundary email had become their template. Men discussed recognizing golden child dynamics in their own families. Therapists praised the public conversation about family dysfunction I'd inadvertently started. The scholarship recipients from my parents' fund spoke about finding hope in the existence of successful women who'd survived similar erasure. Your story went viral in spaces you never knew existed. Patricia narrated over montages of social media posts, blog articles, and support group discussions. By choosing yourself, you gave others permission to do the same. By refusing to shrink, you showed that expansion was possible. The video ended with messages from my chosen family, each sharing what my friendship meant. Eleanor talking about finding the daughter she'd never had. Carlos crediting me with reminding him that late bloomers often bloomed brightest. Dr. Winters breaking professional protocol to say working with me had revolutionized her approach to family trauma. Even Jessica contributed, thanking me for showing her that leaving toxic situations was strength, not failure. When the lights came back up, I was crying too hard to speak. The room blurred through tears that felt like release rather than sadness. These people hadn't just remembered my birthday, they documented my impact, reflected back the light I'd finally allowed myself to shine. "You saved my career," one of my mentees said during the toast circle that followed. I was ready to quit tech, convinced I didn't belong. Your lunch talks about imposter syndrome, about building confidence despite family messages. They changed everything. "You saved my marriage," another added. When you shared about setting boundaries with parents, I realized I was repeating their patterns with my spouse. Therapy started the next week. "You saved my life," a young woman whispered, not dramatically, just slowly, by showing that success after scapegoating was possible, that thriving was the best response to being forgotten. The evening continued with more testimonies than I could process. My parents sat quietly, absorbing the ripple effects of their failures, perhaps finally understanding that their forgotten daughter had become unforgettable to so many others. The scholarship recipients they'd funded mingled with sailing friends, creating connections that would outlast the party. As midnight approached, I found myself on the deck with my parents, Patricia, Eleanor, and Jessica, the strange family dysfunction and choice had created. The ocean performed its eternal percussion while we sat in comfortable silence. "I need to say something," my mother ventured, "not for forgiveness or absolution, just truth. Watching that video, seeing how many people you've helped by sharing our failures, it's humbling. We spent so long trying to keep you small, never realizing you were meant to be vast. I'm sorry we almost prevented this." "Almost," I repeated softly, "but not quite." "Not quite," my father agreed, "though no thanks to us." The admission felt like closure of a circle that had begun with a forgotten birthday and expanded into revolution. They'd never be the parents I deserved, but they were becoming people I could cautiously respect. The work continued, would always continue, but tonight proved that growth was possible even in barren soil. "I have an announcement," I said as the clock neared midnight. "I've accepted an offer to write a book about family dynamics in high achievers. The advance will fund the scholarship program for 5 more years." Congratulations erupted, but I raised my hand for quiet. I want to be clear. This isn't an exposé or revenge memoir. It's about transformation boundaries and choosing yourself. It's about all of you who've shown me what family really means. And yes, I looked at my parents. It's about the possibility of change even when it comes late. As my 34th birthday officially ended, I stood surrounded by proof that rejection by one family could lead to selection by many others. The forgotten daughter had become an author, mentor, friend, and inspiration. Not despite being overlooked, but because oversight had forced me to look within. One last toast. Eleanor proposed, raising champagne that sparkled like star-caught ocean. To Carmen, who taught us that being forgotten by those who should remember you most just means you're free to become unforgettable on your own terms. We drank to that truth, to birthdays that mattered, to boundaries that held, to growth that hurt but healed. Somewhere Marcus was probably bitter and alone, choosing stagnation over transformation. Here we chose celebration over sorrow, connection over isolation, and most importantly, ourselves over systems that demanded our diminishment. The party eventually ended, but the feelings lingered. My house, once refuge from family storms, had become a lighthouse for others navigating similar waters. The book would share that light further, but tonight was for basking in what we'd all built from the ashes of what we'd survived. I stood on my deck in the profound peace that followed profound joy. 2 years ago, I'd bought this house with a bonus they didn't know I'd earned. Now it hosted celebrations of a life they couldn't have imagined I'd build. The journey from forgotten to unforgettable hadn't been linear or easy, but it had been worth every difficult step. To everyone reading this who sees themselves in my story, your birthday matters. Your achievements count. Your existence deserves celebration, especially if those closest to you can't see it. Create your own traditions. Choose your own family and remember that the best revenge against being forgotten is building a life so beautiful that forgetting you becomes impossible. Family isn't about blood or obligation or maintaining dysfunction for comfort's sake. Family is about showing up, seeing clearly, and celebrating growth even when it challenges everything you thought you knew. Thank you for being part of my chosen family, for reading this story, for believing that forgotten daughters can become unforgettable women. What traditions have you created to honor yourself when others wouldn't? Share your own stories of choosing yourself, setting boundaries, and finding family in unexpected places. Like this, if it resonated, subscribe for more stories of transformation and share it with someone who needs reminding that their birthday and their life matters more than they've been told. May your next birthday be everything. Mine wasn't for 32 years, and everything it's become since I decided I was worth remembering. You are too. Never forget that.